Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast, your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. What do we have on tap for Season 4, Episode 16? Two Idiots Discuss Sports, NHL Playoff Preview Edition. The 2024 NHL Playoffs are upon us. We welcome back my buddy John to talk about the Arizona Coyotes leaving for Utah and all of the machinations, the matchups in the 2024 NHL Playoffs. If you are new to the podcast, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5-star, write a review, send to friends far and wide. If you want to support This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast, it is on Patreon. Here we go.
Act 1, Two Idiots Discuss Sports, 2024 NHL Playoff Preview.
It's that time of year. The NHL playoffs are upon us. Back on the podcast to break it all down for you, my buddy John. John, say hello to the world.
What's going on, everybody?
Now, I don't know if the world is limited to about 140 people. That's about as many as we'll probably get downloading this podcast. But so I wanted to start out by talking about the Valley of the Sun, the desert. The Phoenix Coyotes made an announcement. Well, let's be clear. They were the Arizona Coyotes. They're not the Arizona Coyotes anymore. An announcement was made by the National Hockey League. They will be relocating to the city of Salt Lake. And from what I understand, they're actually not going to be in the city of Salt Lake, or it's still debatable whether or not they're going to build an entirely new facility just for that hockey team, because the guy who bought them is the owner of the Utah Jazz, or whether or not they're going to split time in the Jazz's facility. Things up in the air, but the Arizona Coyotes are no more. Reflect, John, upon all of your fond memories of the team that was the Winnipeg Jets, now the Arizona Coyotes, now whatever they're going to be called, and in light of the fact that there is still a Winnipeg Jets.
Well, you see, instead of the team of the desert, it should be the team of the desert, because they're deserting that town.
That's a dad joke.
It's just never worked there. I think the problem there is that this hockey is a very when I go to town, I was in Nashville not too long ago. It's a very city-oriented sport, minus Carolina Hurricane Stadium, which is really strange. It's just sort of in an odd area. When I think of hockey, it's always like the heart of a city, and they just never had that there. Phoenix is not really set up that way. It's very spread out. So the whole thing just always seemed very fractured there and up in the air. It just never seemed stable at all to me. And I know Gretzky was there and a host of others, but it was always just sort of this up and down thing. And we can't argue that Salt Lake and Vegas are hot in terms of growth. People, a lot of big companies, big jobs, sectors moving that way from California and such. So I don't know. Maybe it was just time, and certain markets are just destined to be, minor league markets, and maybe that Phoenix area is one of those.
Well, everything that the NHL wanted came true. They wanted to move a team into the Phoenix market because when they did, I believe it was 1996, Phoenix was one of the fastest growing television markets, and they anticipated what actually ended up happening, that Phoenix would become one of the largest cities in the nation. Therefore, they'd have a huge television market presence, and they wanted to plant roots while the city was growing so that the team could grow with them as well. But you made a very good point that it never really took root here, and one of the big reasons was the fact that the only arena deal that they could get for a standalone facility for the Arizona Coyotes was out in Glendale, and that entire arena deal was a nightmare. There was all sorts of problems with the logistics. It's just from a personal standpoint. I went to the NCAA finals for men's basketball, which was out in Glendale in the football stadium. And it's just a nightmare to get in there, and it's a nightmare to get out. They did not do a good job at the infrastructure planning. If you're going out there for a football game, it's 8 opportunities to go through that nightmare, right? You might sacrifice 5-6 hours of your life, and that's unfortunately what it is on a football Sunday. You're looking at 2.5, sometimes 3 hours in navigating this labyrinth that is trying to park there, trying to get to the stadium. You're not going to do that 41 times a year for a hockey game, particularly on a weekday, right?
Well, that and you add playoffs. But the other thing is, I've been to Glendale, right? It doesn't have a city feel at all to me. It's not. So it just doesn't fit the NHL. What they've done in Vegas, again, heart of the town. Done in Nashville, heart of the town. I mean, I know the Capitals are moving most likely to Alexandria, but again, has a good walk score, if you want to use a real estate term. And it just, you take a place where like you live, Scottsdale, to get to the stadium, it just takes too long. So it just, to the hockey arena. So it's too spread out. It just doesn't work.
No, they had a shot, I think, to keep the team here in the Phoenix metro area with the plan that they put in place for Tempe. And they had 3 different plans that over the course of the last 2 years were put to the voters, and each one of them failed. The gentleman that owns the team is actually part of an auction that's going to take place in, I think, July or August to buy a plot of land in North Phoenix. And the league was just done. I think they were done with the guesswork. So my understanding, and this is the scuttlebutt around at least the Phoenix area, and I think it's confirmed by some of the national reporting, is that this team is going to be gutted. And I can't use a more appropriate term than gutted. They're going to basically gut the team. I mean, contracts are not going to be exercised for next year unless someone is already under contract. And this goes for players, it goes for coaches, it goes for administrative staff. They're probably not going to Utah. There's going to be an entirely new team because the Arizona Coyotes have so many draft picks. They're going to have the guys under contract. They're going to have very likely a new coaching staff, very likely all new administrators from all of the different operational levels. And they're going to have a new facility and potentially a new nickname. A lot of people around, at least the Phoenix area, and maybe this is because of assurances given by Bettman, if this owner that is losing his team to Utah is able to secure this piece of land, then it may be like a Winnipeg Jets situation. It may be like, what's another good analogy, where you've got the Cleveland Browns in the NFL losing their team to Baltimore and then having an expansion team that was the exact same name, the Cleveland Browns. There may be an Arizona Coyotes here in the Valley in the next 3 to 5 years if a plot of land can be secured, if a stadium deal can then be voted on and approved, and then the NHL may vote to have an expansion team back here in Arizona.
Well, yeah, there's talks about Atlanta wanting another team, and that hasn't worked out before. But you have to remember the NHL set the record for its history this year in attendance, overall attendance, 97%. I mean, that's absolutely startling. So, especially compared to most other sports. And, you got to fit the bill. It's one thing to build a stadium. The NHL wants to see it full, like they're doing in Seattle, like they're doing in Winnipeg with those newer teams. They want it like Boston. Every game's been sold out for 9 years in a row. So every single Canadian team obviously does that, except for Ottawa. But there's a certain way they want it to be. And, Phoenix is not always the easiest place to get to either, travel-wise for everybody. So, I don't know. There's a lot of factors there, but money talks. We'll see.
Exactly. There's a lot of money being exchanged in this transaction. The team that was playing in a 4,000-seat arena, which, by the way, I went to several times, so I did get to see the farewell tour, so to speak. It's a college hockey arena, and it's interesting to watch an NHL game. I saw the Boston Bruins here in the Valley of the Sun play the Phoenix Coyotes in a 4,000 seat arena. It was just wild.
So awkward.
Yeah. So the gentleman who owns the team, he's getting $1 billion for a team that was, playing in a 4,000 seat arena. $1 billion is a lot of money, and if he's going to turn around and reinvest it right back into another team, I think it's going to make the other owners salivate at the possibility. Phoenix had its moments with that team. There were several seasons where they were a good hockey team. They went to the Western Conference Finals one year. They lost to the LA Kings, who were the eventual Stanley Cup champions, and that arena was sold out. But the problem is, like you said, it's difficult to get to Glendale if you live on the east side of the valley, and the west side of Phoenix alone, really can't support a hockey team. So you're right. We'll see how that plays out, but it is an interesting dynamic that they don't have a stadium and they don't have a name for the team and a lot of the other things that Seattle had to do in order to secure their team. But the team is moving, and I think the NHL is doing again what it did with Phoenix, is they're looking at Salt Lake, the way that market is growing, and they're saying we want to be in there on the ground floor. So let's switch to a team that's also had a great attendance record, although they did not make the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, and that's one Detroit Red Wings. You had texted me before we were about to do this podcast with a what happened, the question mark, because the Wings had as many points as the Caps, who ended up taking that 8th seed, and the Wings played both the Penguins and the Caps in that week leading up to the end of the season. They lost to both.
Just it doesn't make any sense. But, man, it's just so weird not seeing the Red Wings in there, compared to when we were in high school, college, year after year, the Penguins, the Flyers. It's just these guys just can't get in. And it's just odd with some of the star power. But, I mean, it's a tough league. You got to be good top to bottom. So, I mean, they're due. It's been, 8-9 years since the Red Wings have been in the playoffs. Golly, if the Lions could make it, you would hope the Red Wings could. But hey, they won the national championship in football, so you can't do it all, I guess. But.
Right. Yeah, Michigan finally got its due in college football. The big thing about the Wings was that Dylan Larkin, their star player, if you want to call him that, they do have a bunch of up-and-coming young talent, but their star player, he got hurt, and the team absolutely fell apart. What was curious about the whole situation was that at the time that Larkin went down, the Wings not only were projected to be in the playoffs, but were to be out of that last wild card spot, that they were going to be the second wild card, so they would have a much better pairing against the top level of the Eastern Conference. And I give them at least the credit for coming back after Larkin came back into the lineup. They played pretty well, but again, they faced the teams that they needed to beat in order to secure a playoff spot, and they lost to them. They lost to the Penguins. Yep. They lost to the Caps. So, it's the Pat Riley pain and progression progress is very difficult for many young teams. We like to see these teams that they draft a couple of players. They're young. Case in point, the Arizona Diamondbacks last year going to the World Series with all that young talent. And we like to think that that's sustainable. And really, that is that shooting star that you just happen to see when you look up into the sky. It's very rare that happens. More often than not, these kids have to learn the hard way, and they have to lose in order to figure out how to win.
Yeah, it's all up and up from here, though. They'll be in it next year. I know they will be.
I agree. I think that they're better than the Caps. They're better than several of the teams, actually, that made the playoffs. Well, let's go into the playoffs. I know you said that you had everything lined up. I've got all the matchups lined up here, and there's no reason to hide the ball. Let's start with the Boston Bruins, who, based on last season, I thought would have a higher seed. It turns out that some other teams that they were banging with last year, That's what she said. That just came out. Those teams ended up having better records than them this year. So let's talk about their first round matchup against the Maple Leafs, and then talk about their season as a whole as a Bruins fan in reference to or against, in particular, the Rangers, who just came out of the gate storming and looked very strong this year.
Well, I've got this set up where we could bracket it out, start in the East, go all the way through to who makes the Stanley Cup, and then head over to the West if you want, just to keep it, kind of uniform. But, yeah, I am a Boston fan. Everybody knows that, annoyingly. They started off a lot better than anyone thought they would. People were like, maybe fourth place. They started out 11-0-1. They looked like they were right on track for what they did last year. The big thing that hurt them was not having Patrice Bergeron there. The face-off winnings went down. The team leadership went down. And they had 15 overtime losses. If you even convert half of those to wins, you're, again, the best team in the league.
Right.
So, really, they were right up there. They had the two-goalie system down. They beat Toronto. They were 4-0 versus Toronto this year. Toronto has the number one overall offense in the league, but they kind of squeaked into the playoffs, so they it's a little patchy with them. But Toronto's still in that situation where you're paying a couple guys a lot of money, and then you don't have enough to spend elsewhere. They're second in the league in scoring. Toronto is overall, but the goaltending is way up and down. I don't think it's going to be – I think it's actually going to be a pretty tight series just because the Bruins are so bad at closing out games. Like, third period, they just absolutely collapsed on so many occasions this year, and I don't know why that is. But I think they'll take Toronto. I think they've got that one, mainly because of the two-goalie things. Now, they have to use the two-goalie system correctly this year, which they did not do last year, and that's why Florida beat them in the first round. So – we'll just see what happens there. But I've got Boston in that one.
I do too. Here's the thing about that matchup. You've got Boston, who over the course of the season lost a lot of games that they probably could have won. They blew a lead in the third period, and they didn't prevail in overtime. Well, that's been Toronto Maple Leaf hockey in the last 5 or 6 playoff series that they were in. They will go up in a series. They can't close the series out. They've lost multiple series over the course of the last 2 or 3 years where they were ahead either 3-2 or 3-1 and ended up losing the series. So you've got two teams, one of whom it was at least over the course of this one season that they gave away a lot of wins. And then you've got a team with a lot of the same players, a lot of the same faces that over the course of the last 4 or 5 seasons has given away series. So somebody's has to win, right? It's not a matter of who's the better team in the sense that they've got a better record or more. One team is going to lose more games. So who's going to lose fewer?
Yeah, I think Boston's going to get this one, but that might win the record for the 2 loudest stadiums.
Right.
That's going to be good for that. So,
well, let's talk about then who are they going to have to play? They're going to play the winner of the Panthers and the Lightning, correct?
Let's see. This would be – okay, so you've got the Islanders and Carolina over on that side. If you want to look at that bracket just to make sure we're straight there, I think that's – let me know if you
No, I think you're right. I'm reading it wrong, and I hate the way that they do the playoffs as far as looking at it from a bracket standpoint because the NHL shuffles the alignment after. I mean, some people love this, right? Where you reseed after each round.
Right.
So, yeah, go ahead. So you've got the Hurricanes and the Islanders.
The Hurricanes and the Islanders. This will be really exciting. New York is 8-0-1 coming into the playoffs. Goalie's playing well. They played some close games this year. The Islanders are really bad on special teams and 23rd in the league in scoring. I think Carolina wins this in 5 games. You're talking about one of the most balanced teams in the league.
Yes.
The Hurricanes. So, the Islanders are going to score some goals, but they don't have anywhere near the firepower or depth as Carolina. So I don't foresee any kind of upset there.
That's an interesting matchup insofar as is the comparison to the Leafs and the Bruins, right? The Leafs have an offensive team. The Bruins are the more balanced team. So the Bruins lose only if the Leafs just go nuts and get some sort of consistent play out of their goalie. I think that's the same thing with the Islanders and the Hurricanes. The Islanders can score goals. Are the Islanders going to be able to score enough goals on a Hurricanes team that has good special teams, power play and penalty kill, and a good defense? No. But
it's not going to happen.
Stranger things have happened. So, the throwaway series, I shouldn't say it that way, but I do believe that, is the Rangers and the Capitals. The only reason why I could take solace on the Red Wings not making the playoffs is they weren't going to go get murdered by the Rangers. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the Rangers are going to have the curse that happens in the NHL. It does not happen in the NBA. It doesn't happen in, football. It doesn't happen in basketball. It doesn't happen in any of these sports where whoever wins the overall points during the course of the season loses. The last team to hoist the cup was the Chicago Blackhawks in 2013. You saw what the Bruins did last year. Nobody can, I don't know if it's a scientific thing, can explain this phenomenon of this happening in this sport. But for some reason it does. And, the Rangers are going to beat the Capitals. They're just way too deep. The Capitals have one of the worst offenses. They're 28th in offense in the league. Younger goalie. They know they have nothing to lose, which is what makes Toronto scary. It's kind of scary too. The Capitals have absolutely nothing to lose, but I don't predict that one. I think the Caps might get one game on them. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not arguing that the Rangers don't have that albatross around them, that they are the number one overall seed, the President's Cup, the trophy winner this year. I just don't think that the Caps are going to be the team to do it to them. Speaking of the team that may do it to them, the Panthers and the Lightning are the last team.
This is the one you don't want to miss a single game. This is going to be possibly the best series in the whole playoffs. This is the one I don't want to miss one single minute of, and that's coming from a Bruins fan. Because, this has got to go 7 games. There's got to be some overtimes. I mean, these two teams are stacked. It's the Battle of Russia with Vasilevsky in goal, with Tampa Bay, to Bobrovsky for Florida. They both have cups. They both have tons of playoff experience and wins. I mean, this is going to be a barn burner between these two. I can't wait to see it.
So I'm going with the Panthers. Who are you going with?
I am too. Okay. I'm going with the Panthers, but not by a whole lot. This is going to be a rough, rugged series. And I mean, whoever comes out of this, I just hope no one's hurt. But, it's going to be a lot of heavy hitting. It's a little strange. You got Florida, who's really top heavy in scoring, and it dramatically drops off. But they were the number one team in the league 5-on-5 this whole year. Number one in the whole league. So typically in the playoffs, it's 5-on-5. There's not as many penalties and things like that. So let's see if they can hold up. But you're going to see some ridiculous saves. You're going to see a lot of heavy hitting. You're going to see some great two-way action. I mean, it's going to be really good. I definitely think you're going to see at least an overtime game or two in this.
Agreed. The Lightning, to me, they remind me of the Red Wings when they were coming out of their, what we'll call dynasty era, the Colorado Avalanche, the Blackhawks. They still have a lot of talent that has a lot of wins under their belt. They're just older. And that experience means a lot in the playoffs. So you can't count them out, but they're running into, it just happens to be this strange, the way the points all played out. They're running into a Panthers team that was great 2 years ago, that fell off last year because of injuries, limped into the playoffs, but got healthy and then ended up beating your Boston Bruins, and then carried them all the way through. They had a ton of momentum. So they also have a hell of a lot of playoff experience, Stanley Cup experience. So that's going to be a great series. where are we going from here?
If it depends on how it works here. If it's Carolina versus Boston, I still think Carolina is the better team. If their goalie can play, he's an old Mike Anderson. He's had a lot of injuries in his life, but he's got a blood clot issue he had to come back from this year. So if as long as he's playing fine, they're okay. So they want to keep their series short for the sake of him, the team. But Carolina is incredible on the power play. They're number 2 in the league, number 1 in penalty killing in the league. Getting Gensel from Pittsburgh was just unbelievable. Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Svechnikov, they just got, I don't know, they're really good. If the Bruins play the 2 goalie system and don't shoot themselves in the foot with penalties and really get that 2 goalie system, in a dominant fashion, it's a little bit of a toss up, but I still give the nod to Carolina just because some of those third period kind of woes for the Bruins, and just that overall depth for Carolina, I think is just a little bit too much.
I agree with you. I think the Bruins, if they had Patrice Bergeron on that team,
totally different story.
I agree. They really miss him, and you don't want to say that a team, particularly in a team sport like hockey, where you're running lines and you've got a lot of different guys on the ice contributing, that they could be impaired to the extent that they are by the absence of one player. But that was one hell of a player and a guy who brought a lot of different things to the Bruins. So I have to agree with you, Hurricanes. And then if you're looking at the Rangers and the Panthers, that's another series that would you want to miss one game of the Rangers versus the Panthers?
I think the Tampa Bay versus the Panthers is going to be better, but that's going to be a really tight series too. I still think I give the edge to Florida. They have way better two-way players, especially Barkov. If I was starting a team tomorrow, I'd want him on my team. Rangers are a little sloppy in their own end, despite them winning the overall points. They are a little. They struggle in the corners. I just think Florida's a little bit tougher, more experienced, and I think they know kind of how to win and how to win in the playoffs. I think that it's just a little bit more discipline. I just give the nod to Florida there. I just think grit and leadership and that two-way play is really going to help them.
I'm going to, because I want the curse to be broken. Your analysis is correct. Your choice is very likely correct, but I'm going to choose the Rangers only because they're going to have home ice advantage, and playing in New York is huge. They're rolling right now, and I really feel like if they could slap the Capitals around, they sweep that series, rolling into a series against the Panthers. I know, like you said, it's going to be tough. I just see the possibility that talent on offense and the way they move the puck, I think that could carry the day. So I'm going to go with the Rangers. That would leave us with what? That's going to be, Carolina versus Florida, or Carolina versus New York?
Either one, but don't forget one other thing. The home games for Florida will be not truly home games. There'll probably be at least 4,000 Rangers fans at each of those games, I would think, just because of the mass number of New Yorkers that live in that area. So don't forget about that. I think it'll be heavily laden with Rangers fans in the Miami area there. But I have, if it is Carolina versus Florida, again, super tight series. Goaltending and penalties would decide that one. I mean, if this Florida goalie is on, I mean, he is just incredible. So it may come down to that. I really don't know who to choose between these two. I know Carolina's superior on the penalty kill and power play. Florida, on the other hand, best 5-on-5 team for the whole year. Florida has the best goals against average in the league. So everything is offsetting itself. I would say Carolina's a little deeper. That this is just this is one where I couldn't choose. I just couldn't. I hate to say that and hate to be that way, but I between those two teams, it's hard for me.
Flip a
if
coin.
It's Carolina, yeah, I know. If it's Carolina versus the Rangers, I give Carolina heads up all day long, just because of depth, team depth.
I'm picking my pick to come out of the East, and I'm reluctant to do it because we're older. I still remember the Norris. I still remember the Smythe. I still remember, the old NHL. Having the Carolina Hurricanes be the Eastern Conference representative in the Stanley Cup, it's for some reason it still sticks in my craw, so to speak. But,
I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it either, but I think Carolina's going to come out of the East. So let's move on to the West then, and we can start with the Stars and the Golden Knights.
I've got the Stars all day long. They are the Vegas Golden Knights of last year. 8 players with 20-plus goals, 13 players with 20-plus points. Awesome team defense. Jake Ottinger is the hottest goalie coming in right now. He's historically a little bit rocky, but, they're just firing on all cylinders. They're my pick to win the whole thing, as long as he plays pretty well. He doesn't have to be perfect, but he's got to play pretty well. Vegas of last year, a different story, but I mean, that just speaks for itself, those kind of stats. So,
well, here's the reason why I like the Stars as well, is the Stars, they shit the bed last year in the playoffs. They did not perform well. They had opportunities. I think that team is looking. It's one of those things where a team is better than the way that they performed in the playoffs, and they have substantially the same team coming into the next year's playoffs, and you look over the course of the season, and they played like a team that had a chip on their shoulder, and I'm using a lot of these stupid, corny sports euphemisms, but they fit this team. So I agree, the Stars over the Golden Knights. Here's a very interesting series, the Jets and the Avalanche.
Do not miss a single minute of this. I know it starts late. You're lucky because you're out that way. If you're on the East Coast, get your Zoa, your Woo Energy from Ric Flair, your Red Bull. Do whatever you got to do to stay up and watch this, because this is going to be absolute insanity watching these two teams go at it. Winnipeg was the number 2 team overall in the NHL 5-on-5. So I think this is going to be the most entertaining Western round matchup right here. I give Winnipeg a very, very slight edge, but I think it's going to be tight, tough, fast, hard-hitting, some overtimes. I don't see any kind of runaway there on either side.
I agree with you. All of that. My pick is going to be the Avalanche. It's a slight advantage to the Avalanche, and it's only because of their playoff experience. This is a Stanley Cup winner 2 years ago, right? It's only a year removed, and they had a very disappointing season last season.
Yep.
So, you've got a lot of guys in that locker room. The same thing. Hey, here we are. We've got this chance. We're playing a team that played very well this season, but they certainly don't have the same kind of playoff experience as we do. So I'm giving the slight edge, and that's the term of art I was looking for 60 seconds ago. Slight edge to the Avalanche. Canucks Predators. How much do we want to talk about this, right? Do the Preds have a snowball's chance in hell?
Yeah, it's Vancouver is not as good as what their points show. They rely a lot on like heavy shooting advantages and percentages and things like that. That's not really very favorable for playoff hockey. But I do give Vancouver record-wise, they were the most consistent in the whole NHL in terms of patches of winning and losing. They were the most consistent across the board. 14 players with 20-plus points. Nashville has nothing like that. I just don't think they just can't compete at all levels like that. That's just a constant barrage coming at you. I don't think Nashville can handle that. Maybe for a game or two, but that's going to wear you down really quickly, I think.
More than the Rangers and the Capitals, I think the Canucks are just going to shell the Predators. I think the Predators are if they can win a game, that is a win for them. I'm not saying that that's akin to winning the Stanley Cup or even winning a playoff series, but to pull out a game as outmatched as they are against the Canucks, I think that would be big for them. The Oilers and the Kings back in the playoffs.
Yep. Well, here we go here. Since hiring Chris Knobloch as the coach in November, Edmonton, I believe they have the best record, or one of the best in the whole league.
I believe it's the best record.
Third in goals scored, fifth in allowing the fewest goals. Dominant offense from Edmonton. High speed. This is going to be a speed series right here. So you're going to need one of those big, you might need to run over to Walmart and get a 75-inch, 85-inch TV to keep up on this one. So
yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. It's going to be really fast, but I definitely give Edmonton the edge on this one.
I do too. This Oilers team reminds me not so much of that St. Louis team that was the worst in the division. They fire their coach on the All-Star break, and I can't remember, was it I believe they hired Craig Berube as head coach. They get into the playoffs, they win the Stanley Cup. That's what the Oilers remind me of. This is a team that had a lot of talent. They've been flirting in the playoffs with a playoff run for the last couple of years. So it looks like they've put it all together and are poised to make a playoff run, which makes this Western Conference much more difficult now that we're going to have to go into, okay, well, who's going to play who?
Right.
So
well, I give, if it was Dallas, say, versus Winnipeg or Colorado, I give Dallas the edge, just again with the depth. I still think that series would be exciting. They were 3-1-0 versus Winnipeg this year. I just don't know how either one of those teams, again, I don't think Dallas is, if Ottinger is playing like he is now, that's just scary. But I don't think he has to be perfect for them to win. They just remind me so much of Vegas from last year. Not quite as big, but just that top to bottom ability and more speed.
Yeah, I'm going with the Avalanche, and so seeing the Stars and the Avalanche matched up again, it does harken me back to about 20 years ago with Mike Modano and those teams against those Avs teams that were stacked, and those were always exciting series. But I have to give it, at least by way of the eye test, to the Stars. I know the Avalanche, again, that's a playoff experience team. It's a Stanley Cup winning team. I just think the Stars, based on their experience last year and how they've played over the course of this season, they're going to be able to pull that out. And that leaves us with an all-Canada other bracket. That's the Canucks and the Oilers.
Right.
I have to give it to the Oilers. I want to believe in the Canucks. That's another story. Here's a team that's never won the Stanley Cup. They've only been, I believe, once. They lost to the Rangers in '94. So you want to root for a team like that, yet here they are running into an Oilers team that couldn't be hotter, right?
That's right. Well, remember, Boston beat them down pretty good, literally, in the finals that one year.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I completely forgot about that.
But I still have Vancouver on this. Again, a high-speed series. I just think Vancouver's a little more balanced and consistent. Edmonton goalies are not superb. Don't forget, one team could potentially be a lot more well-rested than the other. Obviously, everybody likes watching Connor McDavid. The guy's just absolute speed demon out there. And Edmonton really relies on their top two lines, and then it just really, really drops off after that. So, tough series, but I still give Vancouver a slight edge there.
Okay. So you've got the Canucks and the Stars. I've got the Oilers and the Stars. Who wins? Yep. I think you already said it. I think
Dallas.
you gave it away
Dallas
in the beginning. All right. Yep. So I have Dallas as well, which would leave us with a Dallas Stars. You've got Carolina. I probably have Carolina as well, but I'm kind of flirting with the Rangers. But let's do Dallas Stars, Carolina Hurricanes, Stanley Cup. Who wins that?
Well, the league does not win because once again, we have two Southern teams playing each other when it's, potentially 90 degrees outside in either market in June. It's just baffling to me that we can't get these Northern teams. I feel like that's all it used to be was that. And the weather was great and the towns were really rocking and everything like that. It's just still a little bit stale. I hate to say that, but it just seems a little awkward to me at the Southern teams in these things. But I do give the edge to Dallas. Both matchups, either matchup, Florida or Carolina versus Stars would be, man, it would be, again, you're not going to see some blowaway like you did last year. I know Florida snuck in one game last year. I believe it was in overtime versus Vegas. But it's not going to be any kind of sweep like that or blowout like that. I think it'll be both lineups for all these teams are way too deep. Solid goaltending. I think you'll see at least one overtime game in the finals. But I just think Dallas is the overall powerhouse.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I'm not going to pick against Dallas. The only team that I think in the West that could be like that, and you pointed out that they've got some flaws, but it would be the Oilers. And the reason why I say that is I really believe that more than any other sport, the NHL playoffs are about momentum. And the Oilers, they remind me of that St. Louis team that just came in to the playoffs with a ton of momentum because they've been playing so well, not just over the course of the weeks leading up to the playoffs, like they got into the playoffs or they solidified their playoff seed. They've just been playing well since the All-Star break. So, they've got this momentum and, what
they're
really...
fast.
Yeah.
They're lightning fast. But the league has overall parity, which is what the league really wanted. So they want that whole nail-biter thing like Detroit and was experiencing, right? They really want that. They want it to be, tight like that. So the much more parity this year, I think, than previous years. And like I said, the league likes it. It's better for attendance and things like that. But, man, it sure would be nice to get a team from up north, into the finals at least. I mean, what are the odds that it would be two teams from the South? It's just really strange. But it happened last year, right? So I guess it could easily happen again. It's kind of weird.
Well, with the expansion, you have Atlanta clamoring for a team, the possibility of Arizona, having an expansion team. The league is expanding, but it's not expanding where, the traditionalists like you and I would like to see it expand. You've got a very limited possibility that you could have a Canadian team in the finals, much less a Canadian team versus a Canadian team. You've only got one Canadian team in the East that's even participating in the playoffs. So, gone are those days where you get the teams that have, like you said, that urban environment.
Yeah,
it's just not the same. Maybe it will be this year. Maybe what we're seeing is kind of the screw turn, so to speak, in some of these southern cities as those teams, they're in the playoffs more often. Carolina's really good. Florida's really good. Miami is just a shitty sports town in general.
Well, yeah, but it's the odd thing is, which I will never understand. Again, this is a hockey thing. Montreal was terrible. Calgary not so great. These teams, every game is sold out. You can't get a ticket. And then the tickets go for way more than these Southern teams that are better. It's just so strange compared to other sports. I can't think of any other sport that is like that, where a losing team literally sells out every game and you can't even get a ticket.
And then you go to some of the winning teams and you could scalp a ticket pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah, Nashville, I was there. You could get a ticket easily. You could get one in Dallas easily, and it does not cost you very much. I mean, if you want to go to a game in Nashville, Dallas, any of these places, it's half the cost of going to a Bruins game, maybe even less.
Right.
It's just how it is. It's just the economics of that whole sport. So.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast to talk up the playoffs. Good luck to your Bruins.
Yep.
The Bruins Leafs history is 100 years old, so there's no telling what will happen. As long as they can overcome that obstacle, I think that they've got a shot. Like you said, it's playing the two goalie system rather, and employing it effectively. This is a team that they were the best team in the NHL last year, and they're only absent one guy.
Yeah, but it's a big guy, and they're solid, but there's just something that is off there. I can't put my finger on it with those third period collapses. That's just not the sign of a winner to me. Doesn't mean you can't do well in the regular season. It just doesn't mean that closing out a game in any sport is absolutely vital. And I don't know if it's because they got a little bit too much youth or what the issue is there, but hopefully they can remedy that and go a little farther than I am anticipating.
Well, let's circle back as we approach the Stanley Cup. Maybe we'll do a Stanley Cup preview episode as well. And
let's do it.
Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Act 2, Epilogue.
I will try to have John back on to do a Stanley Cup final preview. And I might even do an NBA preview here in the next week with my buddy. See if Jason would be interested in doing that. I don't know nearly as much about the NBA as I do the NHL, but that doesn't mean that I can't run my mouth about it for 45 minutes. This is Why Don't Vote, a podcast.